Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Selden, and with me is Lindsay Pollock, who's only going to be with us for a little bit at the start of this meeting because she has a MEPI board meeting to attend in a few minutes. But today we are here with Rich Sheridan. Lindsay, would you like to do the honors?
Well, thank you, Tim. Folks, you are in for a real treat today. I learned of Rich's work from my good friend Bill Summers, who's been a mentor of mine for many years and who is an innovator and educator. And Bill shares the story that he was at a dinner party and noticed a book about joy. And it was a book from the business sector about joy. And Bill thought, boy, if folks can find joy in the business sector, wouldn't it be great if we could find joy in education? And truly, as educators, we're always trying to instill that sense of joy and love for learning. And so that began my friend Bill's look into joy in learning and his connection to our guest speaker today, Rich Sheridan. Rich is the founder and CEO of Menlo Innovations. And I know we're going to be hearing so many words of wisdom from Rich today. So I'll turn it over to you, Rich. And if I've got anything wrong, please correct me with my apologies. But we're just so happy that you're here. And thank you for sharing your time and talent with us today.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I keep wondering, is there anyone in the world Bill Summers has not mentored?
You're
Uh,
so right.
By the way, Bill, I just promoted you to panelist. Here he comes. Hey, Bill, how are you?
I'm good. Hey, Rich, how you doing?
Great, Bill. Good to
Delighted to
see
have
you,
you.
and I'm delighted to see. I hope you're doing well.
Let me
I'm
just do a little.
recovering from a knee replacement.
There you
Well,
go.
that's
Let me
a
just
tough
do a
one.
little bit of quick housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded. All of you who signed up for it will get a link to the recording. Soon as it usually takes me about a day to get it downloaded and uploaded and set up. Bye, Lindsay. We appreciate you being able to be here. Say hi to the folks at the MEPI board. We appreciate them,
Thank
and
you,
we
Tim. I
we
appreciate
wish
you.
wish you all a really great conference this weekend in Wrightsville Beach, North
Thank
Carolina.
you.
Um, so, uh, just to remind you, if anyone wants to speak and ask Rich or Bill or me a question, you can just raise your hand and I'll make sure you can talk. And we really encourage you to jump in. This is supposed to be a conversation. So, Rich, without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Tim. And I'm going to try some technology things. So I'm going to see if they work. You tell me if you can see the Lead with Joy slide right now.
We see it.
Awesome. And then now tell me if you see it change to a couple of books.
Yes.
Awesome. Wow, the technology worked. That's terrific. Well, thank you for having me, everyone. Um, I like to start with a quote by the famous psychologist Rollo May, who said that the opposite of courage is not cowardice, but conformity. And I know if you're hanging around with Bill Summers, you are already on a non-conforming journey. And I'm here to share a non-conforming hypothesis with you that there is, in fact, places in our businesses and in our schools for words like joy and love. Uh, I know Bill because I know him well. I know he absolutely not only believes that, but lives it himself in his illustrious career. And for those of you maybe who don't have as much joy and or love in your profession or your workplaces as you wish you did, I'm here to present you with this hypothesis that there is in fact a place for joy and love in our businesses, in our schools, in our communities. And it's maybe a little tougher sell today than it has been for a while. Um, Tell you a little bit of my personal history. How did I get to be the guy talking about joy in the context of work? Well, it started in a school. Way back in 1971, uh, I touched a computer for the first time. Yes, kids, there were computers back in those days. They were very different than they are today. But I typed in a 2-line program on a teletype. It clacked out on a roll of paper, hi, Rich, because that's what I told it to do. And I will tell you from that point forward till today, I was hooked. I knew what I wanted to do as a profession. I wanted to write software, and I thought it was a great artistic medium. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do that, but by 1973, I had typed in all of the Major League Baseball players into the computer so my friends and I could play our favorite teams against one another during the cold Michigan winter months where I grew up. And that program, encouraged by my computer science teacher at my high school, was entered into a programming contest, and I won the gaming category. And that actually ended up landing me my first job at the Macomb Intermediate School District, a service center for all of the Macomb County schools just north of Detroit. And I couldn't believe I'd get paid to do this thing I love to do as a hobby, as a profession. And I was too young to even drive when I got this job. I stayed there for a few years, but eventually came up here to the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, where I live now, got a couple of degrees in computer science, computer engineering, and launched a career that, quite frankly, looked perfect. I had everything. I had everything the world measures as success. Every year, raises, promotions, greater title, greater authority, more stock options. My wife and was very happy with the life I was providing for her and our daughters. My parents were very proud of me. Can you hear the but coming? There was a far different line in my life, and quite frankly, a far more important line when I marched up this line from programmer in 1982 to VP of R&D in 1997. And that line looked like this. By my mid-30s, my heart was breaking for a career that I thought would carry me for a lifetime. And I was thinking actually of getting out entirely. I was thinking I wanted to get as far away from this profession as I could, this profession of designing and building software for a living. It had betrayed me. So what was going on? How could it be that I had all the worldly measurable success, but inside I was dying? I was disillusioned. And I'm guessing a lot of us find that place in our career. This happened to me in my mid-30s. And like I said, I wanted out. So if you know anything about the tech industry, and it still happens to this day, we often operate in chaos. Chaos is easy to describe. It's firefighting from one end of the day to the other. I would often come home after very long days, sometimes all-nighters. My wife would look at tired me and she'd say, honey, you look really tired. Did you get a lot done at work today? And I realized, no, I'd gotten nothing done. I was busy, but not getting anything meaningful done. And if you live in that land of chaos for too long, no matter the circumstances, bad things happen, negative events occur. And in the tech industry, these are pretty easy to find. Maybe some of you experienced them lately. I heard that Amazon just in the last few days lost millions of orders because somebody relied a little too much on the newfangled AI tools that are coming out. There was this event a couple of years ago called CrowdStrike, where we literally had to reboot the planet after that error. And flights were shut down and people were stranded in different parts of the world, all because of a software problem. So the software industry has its share of big negative events. And usually when they happen in any organization, there is an organizational response. And it typically looks like a big 3-ring binder, a binder filled with templated documents, stage gates, standing committees, meeting cadences, sign-off procedures. We go from chaos to full-blown bureaucracy with being run by the project management office. You go from the land of never getting anything done to, quite frankly, the land of never getting anything started. And this was my life, back and forth between chaos and bureaucracy. And I was getting tired of it because it wasn't producing the results I believed were possible. And I think any of us who get into a profession and pour our heart and soul into it have a dream of what is possible when we do our work. I certainly did. And so for me, this dream revolved around being able to create great software. And So eventually, as I rose up through the management ranks, I started to see these patterns develop, a pattern of placating the bureaucracy on one side while shadow IT operated in chaos on the other side. You were signing all the documents, but still operating in chaos that the bureaucracy was supposed to tame. And as I got even higher up in the hierarchy, I started to think maybe there's a better way. Maybe we could lighten up some of our procedures. By the way, the SDLC title is just an acronym we technical people like to use called the Software Development Lifecycle Process. It's a big name for all these bureaucratic documents that we have. And I thought, well, maybe for small projects, we could just have a lighter bureaucracy, maybe a light version, just a little stapled together document. But even that didn't work. And eventually, I got rid of all this stuff, picked the business buzzword of the day. These days, agile is very popular, but there were lots of other terms along the way. But typically, what I found as I was grasping for the straws of relief is that we really just preferred operating in chaos the whole time. Because chaos, at least you're active, at least you're doing stuff, at least it feels somewhat meaningful. So again, this was my life back and forth, and that's what was going on when my heart was breaking. And I do remember coming home one day, my wife looking at me and saying, honey, you don't look happy. And I said, I'm not. And she said, what are you going to do about it? And I said, I don't know. And she was worried. I was scared. This was the thing that fed my family. This was the only thing I knew how to do. But around that time, and those who know me well, I know Bill would support me on this. He would support me on this. If my business card had more room, it would probably say Chief Optimist on it. I was stuck in a room full of manure, and I was going to keep digging because I knew there was a pony in this room somewhere, and I had to find it. So my journey out, intriguingly, led me to authors and books. And again, I can't help but think of my friend Bill, who is constantly reading books and giving all of his fan followers wonderful book reports on all those books. But my books that drove me were not books about technology. The books that drove me were books on how do we organize the humans more effectively? How do we create great teamwork, camaraderie, human energy? All of the things that I wanted in my profession and I thought we should have in order to do great work that I didn't have. So my journey out was a journey of looking for something, and I didn't even know quite what it was. I only knew I would know it when I saw it, and that actually happened in 1999. I read a book, I saw a video, and I met a gentleman who would eventually become the co-founder of Menlo with me. And in those three things happening in short sequence of one another, click moment, and I knew where I was going. And over the next 2 years, I reinvented the tired old public company where I was VP of R&D. And I got back to joy within those 2 years inside of a company called Interface Systems. And I'd probably still be at Interface Systems to this day. But in 2001, a very dramatic event occurred in the IT industry. The internet bubble burst. And suddenly the company that had bought Interface Systems had to shutter every remote office they had. And for the first time since 1973, I was out of work. I went home and told my wife I'd lost my job. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. She said, "You're unemployed?" My inner optimist kicked in. I said, "No, honey, I'm an entrepreneur now." And, it took her 6 months to figure out that entrepreneurship actually pays less than unemployment. And so I had to hide a bunch of financial things from her for a long enough till the company got off the ground. But in 2001, I did lose everything. I lost job, I lost title, I lost paycheck, I lost the authority, I lost my team, but they could not take away what I had learned in those 2 years. And what I learned in those 2 years is what I'm going to share with you today. What I learned is our journey to joy, yours or mine, is not about finding the perfect setting between chaos and bureaucracy. What I learned is you can throw this picture away entirely and replace it with a different mental model of how we need to think about our human organizations. And the metaphor I'm going to use is that of a small airplane. or a large airplane, but I just happen to have a pilot's license. So I just think about it in terms of the airplanes I learned to fly. We all probably know, pilot's license or not, how the forces at work keep an airplane safely aloft. There is a force of lift that lifts it up. There is a force of weight, countervailing force is trying to pull it back down to earth. There's a force of thrust, pulls it forward, provided by an engine, jet or propeller, and a force of drag that's holding it back. And if we're going to get our aircraft off the ground, we have to have these forces in the right balance, or we'll simply taxi around the runway, which is probably what most of us feel like in our jobs, certainly what I felt like in mine. And so I want to compare these forces to the forces at work on a human organization. For example, the most squandered energy force on the planet, I would declare, is the lift of human energy in our business organizations. Why do I say this? Well, the Gallup Group measures human organizations decade in and decade out and tells us that 60 to 70% of people are disengaged at work. Well, that needle hasn't moved for decades. This is a fundamental failure of leadership. We have to figure out the systems and put them in place that keep human energy high. The weight that holds us down, that weight of bureaucracy I talked about. The thrust that pulls us forward is the thrust of purpose. And I will focus quite a bit on this. And I think this will be highly relatable to this audience. And the drag that holds us back is the drag of fear. And there is so much fear in organizations. There must be classes at universities that teach people how to lead with fear, because it just seems so commonplace. It must be taught. I don't even remember taking that class, but I must have learned it myself because I got pretty good at it as well. So what are some things we can do to keep these forces in the right balance? Well, I would declare to keep human energy high, deliver clarity over ambiguity, give people the ability to get into a workplace and get meaningful things actually done. How can we reduce the bureaucracy? Reduce our meeting load. Move from take a meeting to take action. Try and get the bureaucratic workload as small as possible. I often joke with the large corporate audiences I meet with who bring me in to give this talk, and I tell them, if you want to suck the human energy out of your organization, it's a simple 3-step process. Number 1, have lots of meetings. Number 2, don't make any decisions in those meetings. And number 3, if perchance by mistake you happen to make a decision, that's okay. Just don't act on it, and you will literally pull the life out of your organization. It's amazing how many people are nodding and whispering to the people next to them. Oh, I wish so-and-so was here to hear what Rich just said. This is very commonplace across business organizations for sure. And the thrust of purpose should be externally focused. This is a key element of how I think about getting to joy. Every organization has a purpose. Sometimes it's not understood. But when it is understood, I believe an organizational purpose should be able to ask and answer 2 questions, simpler to ask than answer. Who do you serve? And what would delight look like for them? And I'll talk about that element of Menlo in a little bit and try and cast it into your world as well. And then the drag of fear. You know, there's so many ways we produce fear. KPIs produce fear. Standard tests in your world produce fear. The inexorable quarterly death marches of public organizations produce fear. And here's why the fear equation is so important today, more than ever. Everyone's asking the key questions today. What role do we humans play in a world dominated by artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, and robotics? What role do we have? Well, I will tell you, the role that's left for us is the one that's always been ours and ours alone. Creativity, imagination, invention, and innovation. Those are the things that make us the most human. Intriguingly, though, those come out of the part of our brain that literally shuts down when we are afraid. And so if we want the best performance out of our humans, we have to pump fear out of the room, not in. So if we want to get our corporate aircraft or our educational aircraft off the ground every single day, we need to make sure we diminish the fear in our organization. We actually don't want to get rid of all of it if we can help it, because there are some things we should be afraid of. That's why we look both ways when we cross the street. We should decrease the bureaucracy. Again, wouldn't be practical to get rid of all of it, but there are certain elements of bureaucracy that we can jettison. We should make sure we're doing everything possible we can to keep the human energy of our organizations high. Make sure everyone understands our purpose, those two questions: who do we serve and what would delight look like for them? And if we do this regularly and consistency as leaders in our organization, we will get off the ground safely and reliably every single day. Now, one other delightful piece of aeronautical language that I just love is this. The next time you're on an airplane, the pilot taxis out onto the runway, gives full throttle, you can feel the speed of the aircraft increasing. Realize that in the cockpit, the pilot's watching one indicator at this point. He's watching the airspeed indicator, waiting till it hits takeoff speed. And as soon as the airspeed indicator hits takeoff speed, the pilot makes a small tug, just a little bit, not a lot, on the yoke, pulling it back, creating a new angle between the nose of the aircraft and the runway. That angle has a delightful name for this message. It is called a positive attitude. When that pilot produces that positive attitude, that ginormous aircraft jumps off of the runway. It can't wait to get off of the runway. And this is a key lesson in my talk today, is that this is one thing we are all in charge of, is the attitude we bring into our workplaces every single day. We can be that positive attitude that we bring in, and it doesn't have to be a lot. I'm not talking about being Tigger and clicking your heels together every single day. Just a little tug, a little good morning, a smile, an eye contact, a hey, how are you? And listen to the response and really care about others. But just bringing that small positive attitude any day, in every day, will in fact get us up off the ground safely and reliably. Now, a little history lesson. Probably didn't realize this was going to be mostly about airplanes. Orville and Wilbur Wright, Chief Controlled Powered Manned Flight in 1903. Famous story. Unbeknownst to many, there was a competing group, well-funded group in Washington, D.C., led by Samuel Pierpont Langley. As soon as the Wright brothers achieved this, Langley and his team quit. That's remarkable. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. Why would Langley and his team quit? I think it goes to that purpose I referred to earlier. Langley and his team wanted the glory of being known as the first in flight. That was their sole goal. The Wright brothers wanted to fly. Huge difference. Now, shortly after this event, Orville Wright was interviewed. He was asked how magnificent an invention this was, and he says, "Don't get too excited. We've done the math." And believe me, the Wright brothers were good at doing the math. And he said, "We've done the calculations. We will never be able to build an aircraft that carries more than two people. It's just not physically possible. The weight of the passengers, the amount of fuel required, the size of the engine and its weight, the aerodynamics. It's a wonderful thing that we've accomplished, but it is not a practical invention." Now, how do I know about this story? I read it in a biography about Orville Wright's life. I read that book on a 747 to London. 400 passengers flying at 50,000 or with 50,000 gallons of fuel, flying at 35,000 feet at 500 miles per hour. The first 747 flew in 1994. A scant number of years. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The first 747 flew in 1969, a scant 21 years after Orville Wright's passing. Almost in the context of his lifetime, this occurred. So once we discover the relevant principles of flight, or how do we get our human organizations off the ground, we can, in fact, lift the human energy of our team and fly to heights and distances that were previously unimaginable. This is in our power. And I've been able to accomplish this myself in my own organization. Sorry. So here's a picture inside of Menlo. This is our previous office. I don't have a big picture of our latest office here. One big open room, no walls, no offices, no cubes or doors. We get a lot of educators who visit, and they plead with us after they leave. Please tell the world this is what school should look like. We work 2 to a computer. We assign those pairs. We switch them every 5 working days. 2 people sharing a keyboard and a mouse all day long in conversation about the problems they're trying to solve. We had to create some specialized things. We had to create a practice called high-tech anthropology. A lot of people ask us why you would need anthropologists on a software team. And we smile and we say, well, if you consider that one day the software will be used by humans, wouldn't it be neat to understand the humans the way an anthropologist would so that we can actually delight them? Remember, our version of joy is to delight the people we intend to serve, the people who one day use the work of our hearts, our hands, and our minds. I also want to make a big call out to the educators. A lot of people bring me in as opening day keynote speaker at school systems, and I tell them something very clearly, that while STEAM is in fact very important, and we want to make sure our kids understand engineering and math and technology, I want to make a point that you cannot create great technology without the arts. And in fact, for us, having anthropologists on our team is one of the most important differences we make in the world. So let's never lose sight of that. And I know that's often a challenge in the educational dialogue these days. So this big open room, been operating for 25 years this way, a lot of visual management on the wall, a lot of energy, a lot of noise in the room because people are in constant conversation. And if someone had asked me in 2001 when we were founded, Rich, what's your big dream? What do you think you could accomplish? I might have said 2, just like Orville Wright did, where we'd never be able to carry more than 2 people on one airplane. And if they said 2 what, Rich? I'd say, if I could get a process down where we're only having, say, 2 firefights a week, 2 software emergencies a week, I think we'd be doing pretty well. If somebody had pushed me, perhaps like they pushed Orville and said, hey, what about 2 a month, Rich, or 2 a quarter, 2 a year? Why don't you set your sights higher? I would have said, come on, it's software. There's no way. Well, I'm delighted to report after 25 years in business, we have had 2 software emergencies in 25 years. I would have never believed I'd be able to say that today. And you read the headlines, see all the software emergencies that are happening left and right in our world that are causing all kinds of problems. This is a remarkable achievement. And it's not because we have the best engineers in the world. It's not because we have the best designers in the world. It's because we rethought the entire process of how we do what we do. And the people who come into work every day at Menlo believe in that process. That is a powerful force in a human organization. So how did we do it? How do we build a culture of joyful leadership? Number 1, make sure you understand your purpose. Be able to answer those 2 questions. Who do we serve? And what would delight look like for them? And give that some careful thought. When we thought about that for ourselves, we wanted to delight the end users. Those are people who don't know who we are, because typically the work we do is not branded with our name. People we don't actually meet in large numbers, except the few our anthropologists got in touch with along the way, and people who don't pay us for what we do. The people who pay us for what we do are the businesses that are sponsoring the project. But one day when our work gets out into the world, we want those people who touch our work with their fingertips and the mouse clicks to say, I love this software. And we get that all the time. Value leadership over hierarchical authority. I'm not saying bosses are bad and leaders are good, but we can lead from anywhere. We don't need a title. We don't need a corner office. We don't need a place on an org chart. Everyone can lead in their own way. Pursue systems thinking over bureaucratic thinking. Simple, repeatable, measurable, visible systems beat bureaucracy every single time. Create an environment of caring. We should care all the way up to the top, all the way down to the front lines, and care across to our peers. Building caring into your system is critically important to getting to joy. Excuse me. Build an environment where we are learning together. One of the books that had greatly influenced me in my early days was Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, on the art and practice of building a learning organization. I knew I needed that more than anything. Our system of work, where we're pairing everybody every day and switching those pairs every 5 days, is the most fundamental learning gear within our system. Everyone is growing an inch a year as information is shared and knowledge is shared and ideas are tried. We're learning every single minute of every day, senior people and junior people alike. And then ultimately, I believe storytelling is just a fundamental art of leadership. Storytelling is an act as old as human history. We told stories around campfires at the foot of totems. We built our nation's stories into the anthems. We tell stories of triumph and tragedy from the past, and we tell visionary stories of the future. This is what leadership is about. And so I would recommend everyone to be able to add to their business card, like I have on mine, storyteller. And a lot of people ask me whether joy and happiness are the same thing. I even had this argument with the editor of my first book, who wanted to make the subtitle of Joy Inc. Take a peek inside the world's happiest workplace. And I said, oh no, don't you dare. I said, this is not happiness every day. And she said, what do you mean? I said, it wouldn't be possible in any work environment to be happy every minute of every day without medication. We have to consider that joy is a much different emotion. It is an arc of work done well together over a long period of time. And in this picture, if there's anyone out there who has run a marathon, I have not. I have trained for a half, and I know how hard that was. I seldom see people looking happy at the end of a marathon, but there is absolute joy in the results of the hard work that was done for months leading up to that particular moment. I've had the great pleasure of listening to all three of my daughters say I do to the man of their dreams. And all the hard work of parenting is summed up in that simple 2-word phrase. And my daughters, great girls, but I can tell you, parenting 3 kids is never happiness every minute of every day. Joy is the feeling the fighter pilot gets when, after all the training and preparation, and they come in for a landing in tough weather and high winds. And as soon as the plane is safe and the crew is safe and the plane is chocked, she can't wait to do it again, because it's just the love of flying that drives everything. And so again, we all have our versions of the difference between joy and happiness. And just so we're clear, I think happiness is important too. We just can't have it all the time, because when we're doing hard work, there will be tough times along the way. So where do you begin? People often ask me this. Say, where would I start? And the easiest place to identify is actually the most difficult beginning place of all. And it's inside of each of us. I had to become a different kind of leader in order to get on this journey. And I will tell you, I can remember the moment it started. I took my 8-year-old daughter into work one day. It was a Take Your Child to Work Day sponsored by the school, where apparently the child was going to learn something about watching their parent work that would embolden them to a career of their own. Well, that's not me and that's not her. Those are just iStock photos. But at the time she was 8, I was a newly minted VP. So I brought her into work to watch the work of the VP. Can you imagine a more boring day for an 8-year-old? What is she going to come out with? Oh, my dad does email all day long, and then he does meetings, and then he does emails about the meetings. No, this was not going to be a joyful day for her, and I don't think it was going to inspire her to a career of her own. So she wisely brought coloring books, crayons, and stickers and sat at my task table all day while she watched the work of the VP. And at the end of the day, I thought I better ask her, because her teacher will. And I said, so Sarah, what did you learn today? Oh my, out of the mouths of babes. This little precocious 8-year-old says to me, what I saw here, Dad, was you're really important. So what do you mean? She says, what I saw is nobody here can make a decision without asking you first. Oh my. She was dead on accurate. I had created a hero-based organization, and I was the number one hero. The only way to scale a hero-based organization is to scale the heroes. The only way to do that is overtime. And I'm looking across the table at this 8-year-old thinking to myself, I don't want to miss the best parts of being a dad. So my journey had to start here. I had to become a different kind of leader. I had to embolden the power around the people around me and share the responsibility of leading our efforts with everyone that surrounded me. Until I got that story, things did not start to change for me. And I get it. A lot of people look at me now and they say, Rich, you're the lucky guy. You're the CEO. You have your own company. You have all the power. And there's no question that visionary leaders, top visionary leaders, have a place. A president can call the nation to the moon and safely back. And that's a huge responsibility and a unique place that top leaders have in guiding entire organizations forward. But I want to share a different and more important story, and one that's more approachable by all of us. So if you fly through Detroit Metro Airport at all, you might recognize this McDonald's in the McNamara terminal. I have a weakness, I will admit it, quarter pounder with cheese, large fry, and a Coca-Cola. And I am drawn into this place every time I'm in the airport because I'm busy and I'm probably rushed and I don't have enough time. So a fast food meal is the perfect solution. And every time I was in here, there was this guy named Mike. How did I know? Because that's what his badge said. His McDonald's badge said Mike. And Mike would come up to my table and he was an older guy and he'd lean in. He'd say, how's it going? Have a safe flight. Can I get you anything? Can I get you a napkin? Every single time I was there, Mike did that. I couldn't believe the energy. I thought to myself, they are so lucky to have Mike here. Where does this guy find that energy every single day? And then one day I was there and Mike was off shift. And this young kid is pulling a sled full of garbage out of the back of the restaurant, heading off to the dumpster. And he's passing by my table and he leans in. He says, how's it going? Have a safe flight. Can I get you anything? Can I get you a napkin? I was thinking to myself, what on earth is going on at this McDonald's? This is one of the least relational restaurants on the planet, in one of the least relational places on the planet, an international airport, and these guys are doling out kindness and napkins? What's going on here? So I grabbed Derek, the manager, because I'd seen him a few times there, and I thanked him. I said, Derek, this makes a difference. And he thanked me for noticing. And he said, Rich, anything we can do to compete with Plum Market across the way, we're going to try it. And here's the beautiful part of this story. I'm pretty sure Derek didn't go to McDonald's corporate and say, hey guys, could you form a committee to write a policy on doling out kindness and napkins? No, he just did it. And the best part, it was free. I never even asked for a napkin, ever. My point to this story is this. All of us are faced with big challenges in our industries, in our communities, in our schools, and sometimes the problems themselves seem overwhelming. And I want to deliver this simple message to you inside of that. Your job isn't to change the world. You just need to change your world. And that can begin to have an infectious effect on those around you. And then it begins to spread in a very beneficial way. Start where you are. Stop worrying about changing everything. Change yourself first and change the environment around you. And that will start to become an positively infectious movement within your community. And the best way to do this is through a simple phrase we use here at Menlo regularly. Run the experiment. I get what happens in a talk like this when I give it. Sometimes I get people excited. I get them thinking about new things. They either leave the audience or they head off to their workplace the next day. They've put a lot of stuff off, but they meet somebody that wasn't here, didn't hear what they heard, didn't see what they saw. And they say, I've got a new idea. And the person who hears it says, that won't work here. We tried that last year. It didn't work then. It won't work now. That's against policy. The bureaucracy won't allow it. HR won't allow it. And right then and there, the idea dies on the vine because you're busy. You've got emails to answer, you've got class plans to build, you've got meetings to attend, and the idea just dies because you don't have the energy to fight against that resistant force against new ideas. I want to arm you with one simple response, and it's this. I get it, but why don't we try something before we defeat it? How about if we run the experiment? And what's interesting about that phrase that I found over the years is the word experiment can be very disarming, even to the resistant forces. They can shrug their shoulders, say, well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's just an experiment. It might not work. Perfect. We've just pumped a lot of fear out of the room at that point. We can actually embrace the change we're trying to make. So this is my simple message. Now, why is there a baby on the screen? Because that was one of our first big experiments at Menlo. 19 years ago, one of our team members had a baby. She was off on maternity leave. She was ready to come back to work. She was excited to join a new project. She came up to me and she said, Rich, my husband and I don't know what to do. The daycare we plan to put her in is full. Grandparents live too far away to help. I'm not sure how I'm going to get back to the office to join the exciting new project. Now, in that moment, there was a screaming match in my brain that the mom never heard. The bright voice, dark voice kind of screaming matches you're probably familiar with. The dark voice said, don't you dare say what you're about to say. HR will freak out. The lawyers will go through the roof. The insurance policies will rise. The bright voice said, it's your company. You can do whatever you want. You don't even have an HR department. And so I looked at mom and I said, bring her in. She said, what do you mean? She said, all day? I said, sure. She said, every day? I said, why not? And then she looked at me and she said, where will I put her? And I said, well, she's not going anywhere. Just put her in a bassinet or a car seat or a pack and play next to where you're working. And she said, what if she makes a big fuss? I said, here, it's like a noisy restaurant. You'll never hear it. She said, come on. What if she makes that big baby fuss? Everybody here will hate me because remember, we're in a big open room. And I said, you're the mom. I trust you. You'll do the right thing. We'll work it out. Let's run the experiment. Now, this baby isn't that baby. This baby is Menlo baby number 8. We recently invited in Menlo baby number 34, and number 35 is on the way. This has been a delightful experiment at Menlo. We had no idea how it was going to work out. We found out that the babies, like little Ellie here, can pair program. We found out the babies can go to design meetings. We found out you can actually pair the babies one with another, and it works equally well for introverts and extroverts. I'll let you decide which one is which here. This has been a delightful experiment. We found that our customers behave better when you bring babies to meetings. They don't yell at you. They don't swear at you. They don't raise their voice with you. They think you're cool. So this has been a wonderful experiment at Menlo. And I'm not saying you need to bring babies in to run experiments. I'm just saying this is one we did that produced phenomenal results. And we didn't know what to expect. And this is the purpose of running experiments is when you don't know what to expect, just try it. Don't worry about the stuff that's going to come up. Now, a lot of people look at me and say, oh, Rich, you're the CEO, you're the tech entrepreneur, you founded your own company, but this would never work for us because we're too fill in the blank. We're too big, we're too small, we're too young, we're too old, we're too this, we're too that. Well, one of my goals today is to not let you off the hook. And what I mean by that is I'm going to give you examples of where people also ran experiments in environments you wouldn't have expected it to happen. So one in particular, I gave a talk just like this at Mass Mutual Corporation, a 180-year-old life insurance company on the East Coast. And 6 months later, they called me back and they said, Rich, we want to show you what's happened. No one had ever done that before. So I got on an airplane, flew back to the East Coast to go to the headquarters of Mass Mutual. And Amy Ferrero, their VP of claims, was walking me down the marble corridors of this old company of $30 billion a year in revenue. And she said, Rich, I'm going to take you to the claims department where we process $3 billion a year of claims every year as a life insurance company. And she said, when we turn the corner, you're going to see helium balloons taped to people's desks. And I said, oh, really? What are you celebrating? She goes, nope. Everywhere there's a helium balloon taped to a desk, The person at the desk is declaring, I'm running an experiment. Come talk to me about it. Well, that was a remarkable idea. I never said anything about helium balloons, but Amy had this idea of letting people run experiments, but wanting people to talk about the experiments they're running. When we turned the corner, there were balloons as far as the eye could see. Wow. So I ran up to Susan's desk, accepting the invitation. I said, tell me your experiment, Susan. And she said, well, my experiment is I'm the last stop before we um, send the check out. I've got to do a 3-step quality check. I've got to do A and then B and then C. And the trouble is, if I find a mistake at step C, I have to go back and redo step B. And that's the longest part of the process. And the order doesn't matter. So my experiment is do A and then C and then B. She's just beaming with energy about this experiment. Didn't sound like that big a change to me, but she was very proud of it. I said, Susan, how long have you worked here? She says, 19 years. I said, have you always been like this? And her face turned into a scowl. She said, no, I hated my job before. I dreaded the drive into work. I was counting the days to retirement. I said, and now? She says, now I don't even think about retirement. I can't wait to get to the office. I said, what's the difference? She goes, now we can run experiments. I said, what was it like before? She said, Rich, every idea I used to have had to go up 5 levels, over, down 5 levels, and back again. She said, every idea I ever brought into work died on the vine. She says, after a while, you just stop bringing ideas to work. After a while, you just decide, I'll get joy elsewhere. I'll get it in my community, my neighborhood, my kids' schools, and my church. She says, I never thought I could get joy at work. She says, now I don't even think about retirement. And I'm looking across this room, and there are balloons as far as the eye can see. Same human beings as 6 months before, same paycheck, same capital equipment, incredible difference of human energy. If you don't believe that makes a change in the character of that organization, I'm not sure what else would convince you. This is a huge difference inside of Mass Mutual. And I can assure you, they are no longer your great, 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 great grandfather's life insurance company. And finally, I'll leave you with this story. We've always had dogs at Menlo, dogs and babies. But in this particular case, the gentleman in the orange shirt sitting in the chair called me up ahead of his weekly show and tell with our high-tech anthropologist. That's a normal part of our process. And he's our customer. And he called me up and he said, hey, Rich, it's Michael. I'm coming in for show and tell today. Do you mind if I bring Buster with me? And I said, sure, you can bring whoever you want. Who's Buster? And he says, oh, Buster's my Great Dane. I thought, what? Okay. So Buster greeted me at the front door. You can't see me, but I'm 6'5". He put his paws on my shoulders. His head towered over mine. Buster was probably 7 feet tall. And uh, Buster was a gentle giant of a dog. And my message here is simply this. Michael couldn't bring his dog in where he worked. It would not have been appropriate. But when he came to visit with us, he wanted to be more like us. So he brought his dog in with him because we had dogs. And this is the change we can make in the world, is that once we start to project joy out into the world for the changes we've made in ourselves and the team around us, we begin to infect others with our joy, and they want to be more like us when they're with us. And that begins the cascade of changes that can happen in the world from the simple step of changing yourself first. And so, again, you don't have to change the world. You just have to change your world. And eventually, you will agree with me on my hypothesis that we can take a non-conforming journey to joy. Thank you very much.
Oh, that was great. Thank you so much, Rich.
You are welcome. And I'm gonna exit for like 30 seconds because I
Sure.
actually have to plug my computer and the battery's running low. So I
We
apologize.
understand. Let me invite people who are here to either put things in the chat. I see that Soraya said, how about if we have a room set up for the employer's children and adults supervising, so moms can go to their babies on their breaks. Lisa says, what a great message. Lori says, thank you. Anyone who wants to unmute, please feel free if you do, or again, put your questions in the chats or any comments like you're doing now. Bill, anything you want to contribute here?
Well, the reason I like Rich's work and his approach is that I did not believe it. So after I read the book, Joy, I called Rich up and I said, I want to come and see you. And he said, well, we do tours. I said, I want a tour. I want to talk to you. I said, I don't believe what I'm reading. So I got on a plane and went to Ann Arbor, and about four of my friends went with me, and it's just been a wonderful experience. And Rich has been so generous in helping, especially education. So Rich's Menlo's mission statement is ending the human suffering because of technology. I want to end the human suffering because of schools and learning.
Yep. Yep. So many people have no idea how much school can weigh people down. Teachers
Yep.
dispirited, administrators exhausted, children who are bored beyond belief. Anyway, uh, we've got someone said,
Yeah,
uh,
it's the last thing I just want to say, you can't give what you don't have.
And I'm going to just say that, taking a page out of my book, trying to send it your way, and because you guys have seen it yourselves, that it doesn't have to be that way in our schools. We've convinced ourselves it must be, but for example, when I meet up with educators, and I do a lot, um, I often challenge them. I say, you do know you don't have to teach to the tests. And they're like, well, no, that's how we get measured. Like, no, if you do a good job, the tests will take care of themselves. But unfortunately, we've built it into our brain that we have to teach to the tests. And I think, the whole concept of uh, testing, the way it is executed and the way it's used as a weapon against school system is a big part of the fear problem inside of school systems.
good point. A lot of nice compliments, Rich, for what you've contributed. So just the idea of choosing happiness, of trying to create conditions where we can take care of ourselves, get some sleep, begin to feel a spirit of joy and abundance. I choose joy. I choose happiness as opposed to choosing to focus on the negative things that are part of everyone's life. I mean, we've all been battered, we've all been ignored, we've all been not seen at times, and we can choose to go back out there and do it a little bit better. You know, focus on the good. Anything else, Rich, that you want to say as we start to wrap up?
Well, I congratulate everybody who's here today, that you would spend time listening to this kind of message, because that tells me already you're already taking the first step towards joy. And Bill, you've been such a great friend for such a long time. I'm glad we got to know each other when we did.
Oh,
Um,
so am I.
and I just appreciate your friendship over all these years.
Well,
Well,
I'm sorry that
my
Laura,
pleasure.
sorry that Lindsay wasn't able to be with you for this whole talk. Again, Dr. Lindsay Pollock is my co-host in these things, and she is currently in a board meeting of one of the national Montessori organizations. This is all part of the Montessori Foundation's circle of connected friends. By the way, I believe we are about to launch the official thing that we call the circle. So for those of you who are on this call who have been asking, how can we be more connected with the foundation other than attending these webinars? There's more. Trust me, this is only the beginning. So you're about to learn about the circle, and many of you will hopefully choose to join us. But we're so glad you're here. Rich, thank you so much for being there. And Bill, it's always good to see you, my friend.
Yep.
We really
It-
appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich. Namaste.
Thanks everyone for coming. We will see you next week. Some of us will probably be not with you. I know that Clint and I will be at the American Montessori Society conference in my hometown, Sarasota, excuse me, Washington, D.C. Sarasota is my other hometown. But we look forward to seeing some of you in person, look forward to seeing some of you online. And again, we'll be sending out the recording of this to everyone within the next 24 hours. Goodbye, everyone.
Take
Thank you,
care.
Rich. Thanks, Rich. I really appreciate you doing this.
You bet, Bill. Always a pleasure.
Me
I got to
too.
go to a doctor's appointment with my knee replacement.
Okay,
boy.
well, good luck with that. I hope it all goes
Okay,
well.
we'll talk
Bye-bye.
later. We'll
All
talk.
right.
Bye-bye.